And the quote is, "Coming to see the world as God sees the world changes things." Coming to see the world as God sees the world changes things. The title of my talk today is I Can See Clearly Now, and I'm talking about seeing through those eyes of God, seeing through the eyes of our own spiritual self, of our own divinity, of our own divine self, and looking through those eyes in our interactions and in our relationships and when we're out in the world. And so I'd like to actually begin today by asking you to close your eyes and imagine, what if you viewed the world through God's eyes? How would you see the people that you come up to in your life? How would you see the people at work? What if you looked through the eyes of the divine within you? How would you see your neighbors? How would you interact with people? If you looked through the eyes of the divine within you, what would happen? How would you be? And so I invite you to open your eyes, and I'd love to have some of you share your answer. What would happen? Who will tell me?
Just the two strong feelings I got immediately was I would have a lot more compassion for people on the planet. And then I would personally be a lot more live in peace.
Wow. Who else has something to say?
I would see that everything and everyone is exactly as it should be at the moment.
Who else? What would happen?
I would see the beauty in all things.
All the beauty and all the goodness just became very magnified, and I just disappeared, and I didn't have any more problems.
Wow.
I just felt great love and realized that God can only express love, nothing else, without judgment.
Wow. Wow.
Repeating this, but I just felt so much compassion for everybody. It was just mystical, where everybody has their story and their what's going on with them, but it was just all okay.
I think there's one thing that God sees that I don't often see, and that is the perfection of it and how it all works together, even though it seems to not fit. And that there is truly some kind of an expansion and growth going on here.
Thank you. Amazing when you get that yourself, instead of having somebody talk to you about it, even though that's what I'm going to do today, is talk to you about it. Thank you. So yes, when we see through those eyes of God, we see the world with an open heart. We see the world through the eyes of love and of compassion and of caring. I love that. We see the perfection and how things fit together without judgment, because there's a growth happening. There's something unfolding. We see through the eyes, I also think, of a willingness to care and to assist and to help and to share and to make a difference everywhere that we go and wherever we find ourselves. Not just when we find ourselves in places where we approve of everybody and agree with everybody, but we find ourselves willing to care and share and love everywhere we go. One of the things that happens when we see through the eyes of the divine is we come to people with compassion. And that doesn't mean feeling the feelings of another person. And it doesn't mean commiserating with another person. What it means is having a feeling and being open-hearted. We find ourselves coming to people open-hearted, towards them and with them in open-heartedness. So when I am seeing through the eyes of my own divine self, that means when I go places, I automatically want to feel connected. Say with the waitress in the store or the person who is taking my money at the cash register. I want to feel connected. I want to understand what's going on with someone who has a different perspective or a different viewpoint than mine. I want to lend a hand to the person who's having a hard time because I don't feel like there's separation anymore. And because I see there's a big picture going on and I'm part of that big picture. I remember when I was a practitioner one time, I had a client call me for counseling. And it seems like she got my phone number out of the Science of Mind magazine, and I didn't know who she was. So instead of having her come to my house, I decided to meet her at the church that I was going to at the time. And so we scheduled a meeting time, and I showed up, and here was this woman who was probably in her late 70s with gray kind of frizzy sticking out hair everywhere. And she had on a house dress and no bra, which meant her boobs were down like this, and a tennis shoe on one foot, and her other leg was a broomstick with a shoe on it. And I went in and sat down with her and did counseling, and it was the most amazing experience to me because all I could see was this magnificent light. She was beautiful, and this light and this love, and there was no judgment about all those things that my very human self would have judged. None. That's what happens when we see through the eyes of our own divinity. When we see through those eyes of God, it changes everything. The other thing that happens that kind of got mentioned here when we see through the eyes of that divine self within us is we see another person's innocence. Those words of Jesus, forgive them, they know not what they do. We see that. We see that everybody is making choices and decisions in their life based on their knowledge or lack of knowledge, based on their understanding or lack of understanding, based on their perspective or lack of perspective, based on their experience and on the lens of their past and what they've experienced on their life and on their woundedness. They are making those decisions also out of that brokenness and the woundedness that they have. And so when I see through those eyes of the God of my being, I see that innocence. That's where people are choosing from. That's where people are creating and making the choices and doing what they do from all of those places. When I see through that lens, I see their innocence, and what happens is it softens my heart. It softens my heart, and I feel love, and it makes me have a greater understanding. Instead of harsh judgment, I can see in those words of Marianne Williamson that everything is either an act of love or a call for love. I can come to people in the world from that perspective then. When I'm looking through the eyes of my own I amness, my own spiritual essential nature, I see through the eyes of brotherhood and of equality and the fact that everyone is deserving of love and compassion and kindness and caring and respect and value. Everyone. As spiritual beings, we have this deep need to experience spirit. to experience that divine presence. We have a need to experience that presence that is love itself, that is peace, that is that foundation of joy, that which is the ground of beingness itself, that which is beyond all description and all names. And one of the ways that we experience that presence is by giving way to it, by bringing it into the world, by sharing it. By sharing it, by sharing our spirit, by sharing our heart, by sharing our love. We give way to that by seeing spirit in other people. Because when we see spirit in other people, we are serving their spirit. And when we serve their spirit, we serve spirit everywhere. We have this quiet, deep longing to experience and to express that presence in the world. The problem is when we solely come from our ego, when we solely see the world through those very limited human eyes and that limited human perspective, when we only see it from there, that's what creates the problem, because then we're looking through a lens of separateness. I am separate from you. I am separate from that. You are separate from everything. I am separate from God. We're all separate from everything. It's seeing through those eyes. When we look through that lens of only the ego, we're looking through a lens of separateness and of competition. You are going to get what should be mine. Somehow you can take my good from me. We look through the eyes of judgment. We look through the eyes of they are different than me. They are a different race or a different religion or a different sexual orientation, or they are from a different country, or they are from a different political party. And what happens then is, at best, they are suspect. And at worst, they are not safe. Or maybe they're even evil. Do you ever find yourself calling someone that belongs to a different group than you belong to? When we look through those eyes only of the ego, we feel fearful. We put walls up around ourselves and walls up around our hearts. And when we have those walls up, when we're feeling afraid, you can't experience your own divine nature. You can't experience that divine presence within you when you put walls up. And when you're afraid, or when you're in judgment, or when you're in competition, you can't do those two things at the same time. Oftentimes, I know we judge them as wrong or bad or evil. When we do that, we have simply forgotten that they are looking at life through a different lens, through a different perspective, through different experiences. They're just looking at life from a different place, and that's why they're making the choices that they're making. Those walls that we put up do not create healing. Those walls do not promote peace. Those walls do not create unity. Those walls do not bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. You know, we've just, it seems like, gone through all of these disasters in this country, so much that it's just been absolutely overwhelming. Mark Nepo speaks of that, and he said, the hard gift of any storm is that when we are too exhausted to uphold our differences, there's room enough for everyone. When we're too exhausted from the strife and the pain and the things that are going on, we make room in our hearts because we're not holding up our differences anymore. There's room in our hearts then for everyone, including the people that you would normally keep outside of your heart. When we are in that collective devastation, it brings us to the divinity that is deep within our humanity. And it brings us to the divinity in everyone else that is within their humanity. It allows us to see through the eyes of our own divine self and of unity and of oneness, that there really is only one of us. We're all a part of that. It allows us to see through the eyes of our spirit and to see through the eyes of our heart. And in turn, like I said, we serve the Spirit in other people then. And in serving the Spirit, we serve the whole. And you know what? We don't have to have a disaster in order to live from your spirit. We don't have to have a disaster in order to see through the eyes of God, to see through the eyes of your own divine self. But what we do have to do is make a choice to do that. You have to make the choice that that's what you're going to do. So then when you're able to do it in the difficult times, not just the easy times. Robert Frost said, 2 roads diverged in the woods, and I took the one less traveled. And that has made all the difference. We are being called to take the road less traveled. We are called to take the road of our spirit, the road of that divine presence that is everywhere present, that is the only one that there is. We are being called to take the road of oneness and of unity and of love. And so I read a story this week about a man who is doing that, taking that road of unity and of oneness and of love. And it goes like this. While walking through his neighborhood in Valley Glen, California in 2009, Rick Namias came up with an idea. He was a photographer who had worked extensively with the state's migrant workers. But on that day, he was just trying to get some exercise for his dog Scout. Glancing at the citrus trees in the yards around him, he realized that most of the fruit, the food that could feed otherwise hungry people, would fall to the ground and go to waste unless someone did something about it. And so he did. With the help of just one other person, Namias set to work picking tangerines from a single backyard. By the end of the day, they had harvested more than 100 pounds of fruit. And Namias knew that he had stumbled upon an idea with enormous potential. When you take a close look at many Los Angeles backyards, they are littered with fallen, unwanted, and rotting fruit. Sadly, some see this fruit as an inconvenience. Or worse, it goes completely unnoticed. Many of these oranges, lemon, and grapefruit trees are descendants from when the greater Los Angeles area was blanketed with commercial citrus groves. Rick realized that there was such an abundance of wasted fruit in his own neighborhood. The volume across Southern California must be immense. This could become a nutritious food source for the community who is food insecure, and a perfect complement to the dry goods that the agencies receive in abundance, but this with even greater health benefits. Taking almost a literal approach to the old adage, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, Rick, with a small group of friends and like-minded folk, began to offering to glean his neighbors' trees. After each harvest, they would drive the produce directly to local food banks and pantries. Each pick harvested an average of 400 pounds in just a few hours. Namias used that idea to launch Food Forward, which is a company that brings that food to people in need. There is also a second company that is a sister company that is called Food Finders. Both of them are regional food banks and food rescue programs, and Food Finders happens to be located in Lakewood, California. The organization has moved just beyond harvesting backyard fruit trees and today works with public orchards and farmers markets to take food that would otherwise be wasted and use it to help hunger relief agencies across 8 Southern California counties. They pick up donated food also from hundreds of local grocery stores, bakeries, restaurants, and produce markets and distribute it directly to missions, shelters, and social service agencies that feed the needy and the impoverished. Each month, food recovered by Food Forward and Food Finders feeds more than 100,000 people. He was acting and is acting from a place of oneness of connectedness of our humanity, seeing through those eyes of unity and of love and of care and of compassion. And we have the opportunity to work with food finders in Lakewood. And I have created a sign-up sheet in the back. And they're looking for people to come and help pack lunches for school-aged children Monday through Thursday. And they are looking for 4 days around Thanksgiving time for people to come and pack boxes up of Thanksgiving dinners for people and for people to drive them. So I invite you today to let us know by signing up what days work for you, what you're interested in, and then I will call them and we will organize it so that we can do that. Even on a regular basis if you'd like to. I would love to do that on a regular basis. And it's right down the street from us. Seeing through the eyes of our own divinity allows us to see that we are each a part of the whole. Each and every single one of us. It allows us to see that we aren't separate from each other, but that we are each individuations of that light of God, of that divine presence. We are each individuations of love and of the one. Eric Butterworth says, "You are a window through which the light may shine." You are a window through which the light may shine. Every time you shine your light, every time you share your love, every time you come to the world with an open heart, you are bringing that divine presence into this world in a way that is healing, in a way that is beneficial, bringing that presence into this world. That is what you are here for. You are here to experience and to express that divine presence, to experience and to express your own divinity, your own spirit, your own light. And so when you find yourself out in the world and you are feeling less than open-hearted, when you find yourself out in the world and you're feeling judgmental or critical, or like you are in competition with them and someone is going to take your good from you, whatever that good is, when you find yourself being fearful, I invite you to ask yourself that line that the Christians use, what would Jesus do here? I love that the Christian church uses that. You know, here we teach that Jesus is not the great exception, but the great example. Jesus embodied his own Christ nature. Jesus embodied the truth of oneness and looked at life through the eyes of God because there's only one. He knew he wasn't separate or apart, but that he was an individuation of that presence. Ask yourself, what would Buddha do, the enlightened one? Ask yourself, what would my own divine self do here? When you find yourself in conflict with your spouse or your neighbor, what would my divine self do here? You came up with those answers at the very beginning of this talk. A totally different perspective. So my invitation to you is to commune with that divine presence within you through reading or through meditation or through being in the silence, however it is that you experience that one, so that you can discern what it is to look through those eyes of the divine. Sit in meditation, ask yourself about those people that you're having conflict with. How does the divine within me see this person or this situation? How does God see this? How does Christ consciousness see this? Practice looking through those eyes, the eyes of your spirit, the eyes of your divine self, the eyes of your own Christ nature, and ask, what would that Christ nature within me do? What would my divine self do? And as a result, you will be being a conduit for healing in your own life. You will be a conduit for healing in your own relationships. You will be being a conduit for healing in this world. And you will absolutely be bringing the kingdom of heaven to earth. And so blessings to each of you as you walk this path of awakening and of remembering and of bringing that which is magnificent and beautiful and loving into this world. Blessings to all of you. And so I invite you to join me in a spiritual mind treatment. And so I just breathe into that presence that is right here, the presence that is at the center of this room, that presence that is at the center of this service, that presence that is at the center of each and every single one of us, recognizing that yes, indeed, there is only one life and one love, one presence and one power and one beingness, that this is that presence and spirit of God, of Buddha mind, of Christ nature, of Brahman, of the infinite. Regardless of what we call it, it is the same infinite one from whence everything came. And it is the same presence and power and light and love and good that is the animating force in this entire universe. And so recognizing that it lives within each of us, then I recognize that today it is the thing that is animating each of us. It is the thing that is leading and guiding each one of us to be a conduit, to be a window for that presence to shine in the world. And so today we listen to that call of our own souls. We listen to that call of our own divinity. And we see through the eyes of that divine presence. And we look out on that world and how beautiful it is. We look out on that world and shine love everywhere we go. We look out into this world with a helping hand and with a shoulder to lean on, and with compassion and kindness and care and oneness. For this is the truth. And so today, we just simply rest in this presence. We allow our consciousness to remain immersed in this truth. And we walk in this light and as this light. And so what a blessing it is to remember this and to know this and to be this. And so I release this prayer into that creative law of the universe, knowing that it is unfolding right now all around us. That each and every person is a conduit for this presence, and it is revealing itself in a way that is so magnificent here on planet Earth, revealing itself in and through every single person. And healing is occurring. And oneness is the result. And love and harmony and heaven on earth. And so I release this prayer in absolute gratitude and let it be. And so it is.